It was the warm summer of June, 1912. The small town of Villisca, Iowa, seemed like the very picture of peace. Dirt roads stretched silently under the dim glow of gas lamps, while the faint flicker of lanterns shone through the windows of modest wooden houses. The day's work was done, the shops had closed their doors, and the echoes of the church bells had long faded into the night air. Villisca, wrapped in quiet slumber, looked like the kind of place where nothing truly terrible could ever happen. But appearances can be deceiving. On the edge of town stood the Moore family home, 2 stories, simple, yet filled with warmth. That evening, Sarah Moore had hosted a small church gathering, a children's event filled with laughter and hymns. When the last song had ended and the children's voices had quieted, she and her husband Josiah walked their 4 children home. With them came 2 young friends of the family, Ina and Lena Stillinger, who had been invited to spend the night. Inside the Moore household, the air was filled with the innocent exhaustion of children ready for bed. By 10 p.m., the lights went dark. Upstairs, Josiah and Sarah retired to their room, their children tucked safely into their small beds. Downstairs, the 2 Stillinger girls whispered softly before drifting into uneasy dreams. The town outside had gone still, so still, it felt as though the earth itself held its breath. And yet, in that silence, something sinister stirred. Somewhere in the shadows, whether hidden in the barn, crouched in the attic, or lurking just beyond the doorway, a figure was waiting. The night was no longer peaceful, it was pregnant with dread. A stranger, carrying with him the weight of death, had already chosen this house. The Moore family slept soundly, unaware that within hours, their home would be transformed from a sanctuary of innocence into a slaughterhouse of horror. The clock ticked on. Midnight drew closer. And in Villisca, the line between safety and nightmare was about to be shattered forever. Sometime after midnight, as the town lay in the deepest layers of sleep, the quiet within the Moore house shattered into something unimaginable. The killer had been patient, waiting in silence until every breath inside those walls had slowed into the rhythm of dreams. Then, with deliberate steps, he descended into darkness, the kind of darkness that conceals only monsters. He carried with him an axe. Not a gleaming weapon of steel, but an ordinary tool, wooden handle, iron head, something meant for splitting logs in the yard. Yet in his hands, it was transformed into an instrument of horror. The first blows came swiftly. Josiah Moore, the head of the household, never awoke to defend himself. The blade of the axe crashed down upon his skull with brutal force, over and over, until bone gave way to blood. His wife, Sarah, stirred beside him, only to meet the same fate, her final scream swallowed by the suffocating silence of the house. But the killer did not stop there. He moved with a terrible calm, methodical, almost ritualistic. He climbed the stairs to the children's rooms. One by one, he raised the axe, and one by one, the Moore children were silenced forever. Little Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, 4 innocent lives extinguished while they lay helpless beneath their quilts. Their final moments were not filled with fear or struggle, but with the fragile vulnerability of sleep. Downstairs, Ina and Lena Stillinger, the 2 young guests, became the killer's last victims. Some say Lena awoke, perhaps sensing the presence of death in the room. She may have seen the silhouette of the stranger in the dark, the gleam of the axe as it rose above her. But she, too, could not escape. Her body was left twisted, broken, as if she had fought until the very end. By the time it was over, the Moore household had been transformed into a tomb. Blood painted the walls, seeped into the wooden floorboards, and stained the very air with the metallic stench of death. Yet what is most chilling is not just the brutality of the murders, but the strange, deliberate details the killer left behind. He draped sheets over the faces of the victims, as though shielding them from his own gaze, or perhaps from God's. He covered mirrors with cloth, as if afraid to see his reflection staring back at him. And he left the axe itself at the scene heavy with blood, as though mocking those who would one day search for answers. The Moore family had been butchered. 8 lives ended in a single night. And as dawn began to creep over Villisca, the quiet town was about to awaken to its darkest day. Morning came slowly to Villisca. The sun rose over the quiet streets, its light touching the wooden fences, the empty roads, the sleepy homes. But inside the Moore house, there was no dawn, only silence, a silence so heavy it carried the weight of death itself. It was a neighbor who first grew suspicious. The Moore family was known for their routine, for their early mornings and steady presence in town. Yet that day, their home remained eerily still. Curtains drawn. Doors locked. No sound of children's laughter spilling into the yard. When the neighbor knocked and no one answered, a chill of unease spread through the street. Soon, others gathered, whispers turning into dread. When someone finally entered the house, what they found would scar Villisca forever. The news spread like fire: the Moores are dead. Sheriff officers and townsfolk alike poured into the home, their shoes tracking through the blood-soaked floors, their voices cracking in disbelief. 8 bodies. Every single one of them struck down by the same merciless hand. The sight was too much for many. Grown men staggered outside to vomit, women wept openly in the streets. The Moore house had become more than a crime scene, it was a nightmare carved into wood and bone. The investigation began at once, but answers proved elusive. Who could have done such a thing? Why this family, in this town, on this night? Theories spread quickly. Some pointed to a traveling stranger seen lurking near the train station. Others whispered about a jealous business rival of Josiah Moore, who had long resented him. Even the town's own preacher fell under suspicion when rumors of his strange behavior began to surface. But suspicion is not proof, and proof never came. The killer had been careful, almost impossibly so. He left no fingerprints, no clear footprints, no weapon beyond the bloodied axe itself. It was as if he had slipped into the Moore home, committed unthinkable carnage, and then vanished into the darkness like a ghost. As weeks turned into months, the case grew colder. Trials were held, accusations hurled, reputations destroyed. Yet no one was ever convicted. The name of the killer was never spoken with certainty, and the motive, if there ever was one, remains a mystery. To this day, the murders of the Moore family and the Stillinger sisters are unsolved. More than a century has passed, but the shadows of that night linger. And perhaps that is the most terrifying truth: somewhere, long ago, a man walked away from Villisca carrying the memory of what he had done. And was never caught. After the blood had dried and the bodies were laid to rest, the Moore house did not return to normal. How could it? The walls had absorbed screams no one else heard. The floorboards had soaked up innocence lost forever. And so, the home stood there, not just as a reminder of tragedy, but as something far darker, a vessel for restless souls. For years after the murders, neighbors spoke of strange happenings. On quiet nights, they claimed they could still hear the faint cries of children drifting from the darkened windows. Others swore that shadows moved within the house, even when it was empty, shifting and crawling as if the killer himself had never left. Some said they saw a figure carrying an axe, walking silently through the upstairs hallway before vanishing into thin air. When the house stood vacant, no family dared to live there for long. Those who tried often fled, shaken by what they experienced. Visitors reported waking in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate, heavy steps that always stopped just outside the bedroom door. Doors opened and slammed shut on their own. Objects moved from one place to another as if guided by unseen hands. And almost everyone who entered spoke of the same, unbearable sensation, the feeling of being watched, as if a pair of eyes were always following them through the rooms. Paranormal investigators who dared to spend nights inside the house recorded chilling evidence. Disembodied voices captured on tape, children whispering, a woman crying softly, a man's low growl. Cold spots appeared suddenly, as though the air itself was being drained of warmth. Some investigators even claimed to feel an invisible hand brushing against their arms, or the icy breath of something standing just behind them. Perhaps most disturbing are the reports of the axe itself. Though the murder weapon was removed long ago, visitors insist they sometimes hear the sound of metal striking wood in the silence of the night, the echo of an axe being swung again and again. It is as though the murders are replaying themselves endlessly, a loop of terror that refuses to fade. The Moore House is no longer just a building. It has become a scar, a wound in time, a place where death clings to every corner. And those who dare step inside know one thing for certain: the victims may be gone, but their spirits, and perhaps their killer, are still there, waiting. More than a century has passed since that blood-soaked night, yet the Moore House still stands. Weathered wood, peeling paint, broken fences, it looks like any other abandoned farmhouse scattered across the Midwest. But step closer, and you feel it. A heavy presence clinging to the walls, pressing down on your chest, whispering in your ear. This is not just a house. It is a tomb, a memory carved into timber and stone. Those who dare to enter speak of a curse that lingers here. Many describe being overcome by sudden waves of sadness, anger, even uncontrollable fear, as if the house itself were trying to infect them with the emotions of that dreadful night. Some leave with scratches on their arms, bruises on their skin, or nightmares that follow them for weeks. Others claim to see the children, pale and fleeting, watching silently from the corners of dark rooms. And then there are the ones who swear they've seen him, the shadow of the killer, axe in hand, moving slowly through the upstairs hallway. The Villisca Axe Murder House has become more than just a place of death. It is a warning. A reminder that evil does not vanish with time. It stays, it festers, it feeds on memory and fear. And perhaps, just perhaps, the reason the killer was never caught is because he never left. His spirit, his violence, may still linger in those blood-stained walls, searching for new victims, waiting for the living to step too close. Today, tourists and paranormal seekers come from around the world to face the house. Some enter with bravado, certain that ghosts are nothing more than stories. Few leave unchanged. The Moore House has a way of touching something inside you, something primal, something fragile. It reminds you how thin the veil between life and death really is. So if you ever find yourself standing before the weathered door of that house in Villisca, ask yourself one question: do you dare go in? Because once you cross that threshold, you may hear the echoes of children crying, the footsteps on the stairs, the swing of the axe through the darkness. And you may never truly leave. If you want to walk deeper into the forgotten, the cursed, and the abandoned, subscribe to Abandoned Earth. Because this was only one story. And there are countless more waiting in the shadows.